Good morning and welcome to the Body Dialogues. I'm so happy you are all here joining today. Oh, it's good to see faces. Happy Saturday. Thank you for spending your time with me. Thank you for coming into this space and gathering. It's something we need right now. And so is the topic, the nervous system. So this is a space where we're going to be spending a little bit of time together. I'll be sharing some slides and some information. I love a good data dump. My name is Dr. Carrie Egan, for those of you who have not met me. I am the president of Integrative Soul Healing, and I've spent the last year gathering lovely souls like yourself into spaces like this to take an opportunity to reset our nervous systems, to go deeper into ourselves, and to claim our own healing. And so thank you for joining me today. My co-host, Robin Callis, who you'll see on the chat, you can direct message any questions to. I'll be pausing at certain points to ask if there's anything for me to address. If you don't prefer to be on the video, because this is recorded as you saw when we launched the call, it will be posted on my YouTube channel for review in case there's anything you need to go back to. But know that whatever's meant to land for you today will, and whatever's not, just let it go. You came for whatever piece is for you. And I hope to be able to provide that to each of you. So again, Robin Callis, direct message if you choose to, and we'll be pausing it in between different moments to reflect on any questions. So just taking a breath and landing in this moment together. Landing in the Saturday morning that you chose for yourself will be about an hour. I'll be breaking with the slides at that point, so if you need to go, please do. I'll be staying on for any other questions, and if you do choose, you can unmute yourself at that time and we can also exchange. This feels good. So if any of you have a current practice with meditation, I will be using some language to kind of set our space and taking you through some guided visualizations to do so. If you have practices that you connect to other spaces, often I use the term source or universe, creator. Diana Steibel is the founder of Theta Healing, and she has given a beautiful meditation about walking up into the seventh plane. But today we're going to spend a little bit more time in the body. And we're also going to invite you to do something that's called a body scan. And those of you who have no practice with that, it's no problem. It's just closing your eyes and sinking in and just letting whatever pops in for you as you allow the information to come down through all the levels of the body. And just see what you see, feel what you feel, hear what you hear. So we are going to start that way today before we move into, as I lovingly call it, the data dump. So just take a moment. Get yourself kind of settled in your seat. And I invite you to close your eyes if that's right for you. If it's not, that's totally fine. It's only an invitation. And maybe just start by taking a breath into your heart center. Filling that space up, bringing a little gratitude for the space you carved for yourself and your nervous system today. And on your next breath, maybe just letting some of the tensions from the week. This was a dense week. It's a pushing time. Just begin to let that fall away. And as you take your next breath, let those energies from your heart space just begin to float down gently and easily all the way in to this root of you, into your pelvis, where it meets your chair, your bed, your couch. And just have a moment of that connection using your awareness. We know where our attention goes, energy flows. And so just taking a moment to feel that seat beneath you and literally land in that moment. Nice. And on your next breath, allow those energies to again float down through your legs, all the way down to your feet. Just open these imaginary drains on the bottoms of your feet. And just let those tensions, those worries, the overthinking, the overdoing that many of us get stuck in our weeks, in our days, in our minds, just for now, surrender that back to this beautiful Mama Earth. Let her hold that for you. And on that next breath, just let your energy sink all the way down into the core of this earth motor, into her crystalline grid, into that Schumann resonance that resonates at 7.83. And allow your nervous systems to anchor into this Schumann resonance. Be nurtured by it. Be settled by it. Be held. Beautiful. And tuning into those energies of this earth plane, the oceans, the mountains, the valleys, the beautiful skies, sunsets, sunrises, all of the colors in the visible spectrum, that we are these light bodies. I'm bringing up those energies from that center of Mother Earth all the way back to that root of you, all the way to those feet, and bringing in that energy of beauty and wonder, support, stability, and gratitude for the land that you're on. And if any of those colors come to visit you, let them. They're here to nurture you, to nourish yourselves. Start to sit that energy up through the bottoms of the feet, allowing it to begin to nurture all of your cells, atoms, quantum particles, your DNA, your RNA. As you sip it up through those legs, back to that root of you, feeling the support, feeling that nurturance, and feeling that gratitude. Pulling that up with your next breath through these beautiful energetic centers. If you're not familiar with the term chakra, they're aligned at our spine. They flow and support one another and connect to our organs, our glands, our tissues, our cells. And so even if you're not familiar with them, just begin to breathe this energy that you've been connecting to up through this base of you, up through your low belly, up through the center of you, where your diaphragm is. You may have felt your breath moving into your belly or to your chest. And if it feels right for you to sigh or to move, those are beautiful ways to release energy. That's how the body knows to. And when we don't get in the way of it, we do it freely, like our animals. Sipping that all the way up through your heart space and letting that expand and widen for whatever you need today, whatever you're calling in for your moment. Sipping that up through your throat, your jaw, your ears, your eyes, all the way up to that brow, and that brain sits. And in your next breath, breathe into the space above your head. And if it is your practice to connect to Source, Universe, Creator, do so. And for now, we're just going to flood this space and all of our cells, for those that choose it, with that unity consciousness of divine, pure, unconditional love. Taking one last breath into that, you're just going to allow your imagination, almost like a camera, to begin that scan we spoke to now that you're above your head. So just let that light turn on and just witness as we drop down from above the head, over the skull, through the face, down the neck, over the shoulders, down the arms, down your chest, down your belly, down your pelvis, down your legs, down to your feet. And then just come right back up and out. And just know that whatever information you needed is already there. And notice, was there tension anywhere? Was the mind so busy it was on its grocery list, the next thing to do? Was there any emotions that came up or sensations? All is just perfect. Release any judgment, expectations, criticisms. Just let it be. And we'll be coming back to this body scan, and you'll have a moment to have a comparison. So taking one more breath into this moment, and when you feel ready, I welcome you to open your eyes. So I feel so grateful to get to present on the nervous system today. My background as a chiropractic physician focused quite a bit on the nervous system, and it actually rooted me back into undergrad when I first saw that picture of it being set up in class and thought, wow, that looks really complicated. I got to learn about that. Little did I know the journey I was going to go on with this. And today's message is really about understanding the state of our nervous system and beginning to tune into that state in whatever way you connect to that. This was really driven home for me years after I'd been practicing on the two systems that we'll be speaking to, which is much like our gas pedal and our brake pedal. And the big words for that is sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic is something that we need to mobilize, to be in life. And the parasympathetic is something we need to restore. But when I also understood that our survival programming, fight, flight, and freeze, are part of the sympathetic nervous system or our gas, and that the rest, digest, and heal is part of the parasympathetic. So much open for me. Years of patients being on the table, trying to communicate with their nervous system, trying to get more connection, trying to release stored energy, pain. And what state were they actually in there? Were they in that place to receive? Were they in that place to heal? And so the journey began of, are we? How do we know? How do we know? How do we know where we're at? How do we change it once we know? Why do we want to change it? What is the cost of being in that fight, flight, freeze for so long? I didn't know until I crashed. That was a wake-up call. And this whole other element of healing and how to do so really came alive for me. And so I'm hoping today to share a little bit with you about my learnings in this journey. We have to start with Albert Einstein. And I love that the future of medicine will be the medicine of frequencies. This was not the language when I came through my medical training, but this is what I knew to be true. And I invite you to investigate this for yourself. The nervous system, central, meaning brain and spinal cord, to keep it simple. Peripheral, or what's reaching out from that, this would be the spinal nerves. And as you can see on the picture on the screen, that divides into what's called autonomic and somatic. Somatic being our muscular control of which we use our bodies. Autonomic, we can also use the term automatic. This is our digestion. This is our cardiac rhythm. This is our breath. And thank goodness that these things work automatically, or we would have even more flooding thoughts in our mind than we already do. But I wanted to also bring in the component that this nervous system is our electrical connection to the outside world, and inside it's connected to everything. And it transponds and receives and interprets our outside world. That was big for me, because if we are in a nervous system that is charged, imbalanced, burnt out, how are we receiving the outside world? And how is the outside world receiving us? As stated, it is connected to the whole body, and it's full of the electric messengers that enable us to receive and respond to energy with truth or with fear. Or some would say everything boils down to love or fear. And that survival programming I was speaking about is triggered by fear. Mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, perceived, real, historic, future. It also gives us this illusion of being alive. I had to put this meme up, not just talk all brain stuff, because this is kind of what most of our brains do look like. Righty tighty, lefty loosey, don't trip over stuff. Memes, puns, don't be awkward. But this is the crux. So if any of you have heard of the term polyvagal by Stephen Porges, it speaks to this long cranial nerve that I'll be referencing called the wanderer, or cranial nerve 10, or the vagus nerve. And if anybody has done any work in the neuro community, such as I have, the big term now is vagal tone. What's your vagal tone? Well, it's important. So this wiring, and the next slide will show you the picture, all the wires from the brain or cranial nerves grow out like wires and come down and meet their end systems to turn on and off, right? Sensory in, motor out. So this nerve grows out from the brain, meets all of the face, comes down through the heart and lungs, and comes down to all the digestive tract. So when in balance, this bottom portion of this picture is entitled social engagement. We are wired for social connection as the mammals that we are. And in this place, when we are feeling safe and we're oriented to our environment, we can be in a place of curiosity. We can be in a place of openness. We can be in a place of compassion and mindfulness, groundedness, and in our present moment, and experiencing joy. Sounds good, right? Well, often we are activated or we are triggered, which turns on that sympathetic nervous system I spoke to. And what I love about this slide, you notice this bell curve, right? On this side, this is an arousal curve. So it begins with the flight mechanism at worry and concern, anxiety as we step up, fear as we step up from there, panic as we step up from there. The great thing about this aspect of the nervous system is it's wired for surviving. So if the former times we had the saber-toothed tiger in front of us, within a split second, you're not thinking about it. Do I need to move towards it and fight it, or do I need to move away from it? What are my chances here? The best part about this arena is I can get away from this threat, or I can fight this threat to survive. So on the fight mechanism, when you move towards this perceived or real threat, goes from frustration to irritation, to anger, to rage. And how many times a day are we in worry? How many times a day are we starting to get agitated? This was an eye-opener to me. No, we're not at panic and rage. I hope we're not all day. That would be really exhausting for us and everyone else. But how often do different thoughts slip in? Or driving in a road and somebody cuts you off, or you're concerned about getting somewhere on time. And then these thought patterns start looping. And if we haven't started to tune into them and learn to start to interrupt them, they can take over. And that's what this drove home to me, that we end up in takeover, that our physiology ends up in takeover. There's a whole cascade that happens in this, and we need it, right? Blood will shunt away from the organ systems and move to the extremities so that we can run or we can fight. It's great. It's genius. The fascia that surrounds everything in the body actually clamps down. Genius, because if you were to be cut, it would stave off bleeding. It changes our pupil to get more light in. It also shrinks our visual field. That's the tunnel vision you often hear about in those that have gone through traumatic events. It's genius in that you can see right in front of you or see what the threat is, but you've lost a whole peripheral field of vision. And in this state, you're not saying, oh, pretty tree. No, it's, I got to get out of here. I have to fight this. So you're now losing the ability to take in your world. These have big impacts. And when we bring it back to the point of how often are we in worry? How often are we in agitation? How often are we in takeover? Starts to really change that component of how we're relating with ourselves in the outside world. In fact, can we feel ourselves in that state? Because truly, when we're going through a perceived threat, the frontal lobe, which is supposed to be our inhibitor, and it's supposed to be our control mechanism, and it's supposed to be our executive function, goes offline. It is the youngest, but it's the most important, and it literally goes offline. We drop to these lower centers in the brain, into these limbic patterns, and we're no longer really in touch with these higher centers of ourselves, and actually not really in touch with what's beyond. And can we even feel ourselves? Because again, in those states of trauma, right and left brain will even go offline in order to survive. But that's not a place of processing. That's not a place of feeling. That's not a place of presence. So as this arousal curve continues to activate, there's a very important point right above it in that dashed line of overwhelm. So this is the oldest mechanism of surviving that we have as mammals, and it uses the back part of that vagus nerve. That's why it says dorsal. This is the I can't. This is the freeze. This is the deer in the headlights, the possum. Those can be either from hyper or hypoarousal, but the point in this freeze component is the body is trying to conserve energy. So this is where we are immobilized. This is also going to result in experiences such as numbness, depression, disassociation, hopelessness, shutdown. And one of the reasons I love this slide and use it to teach is that word shame at the top. How often is that something that comes up for you? And if you're not recognizing that word itself, I know when I did my deep dive on this, it was the shoulding. You should have done that. You shouldn't have done this. You should do this. You should do that. You shouldn't have done that. And now we're back to the mental looping. And all of these patterns have a benefit of trying to help us, right? When I really started to pull this apart for myself, it was a way to motivate myself, get stuff done, do the right thing, not do something I shouldn't do. But when I really pulled out what was under it, it was a lot of shoulding, which is essentially telling me I wasn't doing something right, which was essentially shaming myself, which was essentially putting me in a freeze component in my nervous system or overwhelming myself with that pattern of thinking, hijacking my own cells. Do any of you do this? Have you done this? What are you even noticing in your cells as we start to talk about it? Are there any tensions that start to creep up? Any worries that might come in? Just notice. The interesting thing about us being these mammals is that the first year of our lives, we are dependent on a caregiver, right? In order to grow this big, beautiful brain, we have that interesting proportion as children. And for that first year, we are dependent. And if you think of like a mother with her child or a father with their child, often they're in this position in their arm, the whole spine supported. There's a lot of visual connection, often facial engagement. So now we're back to this social engagement system. Maybe you're cooing. This is where mirror neurons turn on. This is where the baby starts to vocalize. You're thinking even of the sounds that you would make with a child, a cooing, a soft sound, we hope, which has a different response in our body than something of another octave or something with different power in it. And so this is the first realm that the nervous system starts to understand safety, connection, communication. But not all of us had a care partner that was able to do this. Not all of us had someone to make us feel safe. And so what was the consequences of that? They did a study in the orphanages and it was not Russia, Ukraine, I believe it was, when they had an influx after one of the wars from so many children that weren't cared for. These children were placed in their own bassinets and they did not have enough support to touch these children, to pick these children up, to truly care for these children. And when they followed what happened to their nervous systems, it was a vast array of dysregulation, from diseases to disorders, to even finding their own mechanisms of beginning to rock tics or habits to try to calm their own nervous systems because it was so charged from never getting that experience of safety, calming, and co-regulation. So our ability to regulate our emotions requires this typical neurosequential development in childhood. And this is determined, as stated, by exposure to a consistent co-regulator who, by the way, needs to also be co-regulated. And with great love to every parent and to our entire lineage who all did their best with where they were and what they had, not all of us got to experience a grounded, regulated adult. Or if we did, maybe they weren't consistently that way. And so we're just going to send some love and healing into all those places and spaces for our lineage and for ourselves where it wasn't available, or it was and it was taken. This in turn will drive the state or tone, back to that tone, that term, of that automatic or autonomic nervous system. This is the wanderer cranial nerve 10. So you can see it has its own investments in those facial expressions. We talked about cooing, eye contact, vocalization at the throat. It comes down into the heart and lungs because we need those systems, of course, to speed up or slow down if we're fighting something or running from something. So they need that direct contact. And then this middle of the picture is really where kind of that diaphragm is. So now we're going subdiaphragm. And this is where the rest of the vagus nerve invests in all of those organ systems. So as mentioned, when we're in the activated survival state, blood is all the way out into the extremities. So if you were running from that saber-toothed tiger and you did get away and you got back to your cave, and the first thing you'd probably do is, right? You catch your breath, signifying I'm safe. I mentioned in the walk-up, animals at this point will actually yawn or shake out the charge that their system held to mobilize. You know, when the gazelle gets away from the lion in the plains, you'll see that. And the beauty of that is they reset their nervous system. They create that space of safety and the blood comes back to the organ systems. Right? That is where we digest. That is where we assimilate our nutrients and we eliminate. Right? So we're back at rest, digest, heal for this vagus and for this parasympathetic nervous system, and fight, flight, freeze. How many of us have jacked up sleep, jacked up digestion, busy brains, never stop doing? And this can look a variety of ways as it gets stuck in the nervous system and attenuated over time. So breathing, which we do all day, right? Because it's automatic and autonomic, but we also have conscious control into it. And so this is why it's one of the most powerful ways to interrupt some of these systems, whether we're going into a full breathwork journey for an hour and really deepening in what we can do with that, or we're just pausing, like right now, taking a moment, closing your eyes, filling up your belly and lungs with a breath, and then taking your time with the exhale through your mouth, spending twice as long. Emptying all of the air out. Often you'll hit a point of feeling like, oh, there's no more. Keep going. The diaphragm is then contracting up on those heart and lungs. You're getting a beautiful squeegeeing up into this upper part of the chest. That inhale you took, that big belly and chest breath, squeegee down on the intestines. Like it's meant to be doing this fully all day long. Yet when we're in this busy place and we're in this go, 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 and we're in this overthinking, what do we get? We get that really shallow breath, and sometimes fast. Sometimes too fast, not fully oxygenating our lungs, not fully going through its full pattern of movement, often becoming a little bit stiff, hardened. Because when we spoke about that fascia getting tight in that protective space, if we are not melting that, dissolving that tension, fascia will dehydrate and harden, feeling almost like cement in the body. At an effort to protect us, it thinks it's doing the right thing. And again, thank you. But this was not stuff I got taught. Oh, you got to do this breathing. Oh, you got to dissolve these tissues for optimal health and for a balanced nervous system. And what's the big deal with breathing anyways? Well, you know, we take a breath as we come in and we take our last breath as we go out. We absolutely need that component. So why aren't we partnering it with a little bit more? And what happens when we begin to do so? And if you did join me in that breath, what did you notice? Did you notice you were annoyed? I did when I started doing breath work. I just got annoyed. Did you notice maybe you dropped your shoulders? Did you notice you felt maybe a little calmer after? And this is the way your body starts to teach you. This is the way we begin to connect and partner with it and get the messages that are there waiting for us to restore and to rebalance. Sensory in and motor out is the way that these wires, like I like to say, for the nervous system work. So I just threw that slide in so that you'd have that visual that in a reflex arc, this is what is also helpful for survival. I touch the fire, I sense the heat, my muscle pulls me away. But it's the language of the nervous system. So in order to feel, right, we have to be in our body. That gets turned down in those states of survival. If you needed to run through a thicket of thorns to beat that saber tooth, you wouldn't stop and be like, ow. You keep going. It's usually after, as the system resets and lets down, that those sensations come up. And that was an issue for me as I started to really dissolve the tension in my nervous systems, that there was a protective energy around, yeah, I don't want to, and I don't want to feel this. I got stuff to do. And of course, the automatic thinking that something really is wrong when we start to experience sensations or experience emotions that we didn't have time to before, or we weren't regulated enough before, or we weren't in our bodies before. So you'll laugh going through school and learning all these crazy names for different parts of the brain. I did this memory device of amygdala. Okay, it's called amygdala. It's in the amygdala. The amygdala is a place in the brain. It's really our threat detector, but I called it amygdala forever. So my joke when I teach on it is like, everybody wants to know amygdala, right? Of course. But it is the part of the brain that's constantly like scanning for information around us. Again, thank you. We need that, right? Out in Serengeti, we really needed that. But it still works in the same way. The same pathways work. Again, whether it's traffic, whether it's the meeting you got to get to on time, whether it was the disagreement you had with your partner in the morning, whether it's going back over the story that came up with that, or whether it's, anticipating what is going to happen when you come home that evening, that threat detector is going off. And when it does, as stated, this big brain that we love and we want to preserve and keep healthy goes offline. Goes offline. We go back into those limbic loops as stated, and we're in that pattern of mobilization to either get away or get to something, fight something. So defense, that was another big for me about amygdala. Those defense patterns, the ones my family used quite a bit and we was habituated in my family. Okay, so that was early amygdala firing. Was that safe? Was I feeling my body? And when you think about maybe some of your early childhood memories, what state were you in? And if you were in a balanced state, that's so awesome. And thank you, because we need more of that in this world. We all know over the past 5 years, fear has been rampant, not for the first time in human history, but in a different way. And that fear can feel palpable. And that fear, because we have these big electromagnetic brains and hearts, right? It also projects. Our thoughts project, our hearts magnetize. And so what are we charging our fields with? And what are we charging our relating dynamics with? Back to the question, what is your state? And how do you know what it is? And when we've lived in these high attenuated states, do we even know what calm and relaxed is anymore? I mean, literally, it took me crashing, like immune system, skin, all, hormones, everything crashing to slow down because I didn't know this. And to that point of initially, that didn't even feel safe or good. I got stuff to do, mind going like this and body being like, I literally can't. I'm not helping you. We're not going to, no. So that was my big learning that I was opened by, and wanting to bring some of this just basic information back to you for, again, whatever way it's meant to land for you in this moment. But knowing that high emotional states do trigger that threat detector, do take our higher cortex offline, do hijack us. Now, I'm not saying we're not meant to have emotions. We are in the human experience, but generally we're seeking the good ones and we're avoiding the bad ones instead of allowing the spectrum of emotions to be just what they are. As Candace Pert said from NIH research, they're meant to be molecules in motion. Molecules in motion. And yet we're kind of holding them down, or we're spewing them out at somebody. We're either imploding with them or exploding on somebody with them, which all has costs. If we're internalizing these emotions, those molecules that should be in motion, where do they get stuck and stored? Well, I can definitely tell you the fascia, because that's our emotional vault, but also the organ systems. If you had any exposure to Eastern medicine, there's energies with each organ system: lungs, grief, sadness, uncried tears, heartache, heartbreak, liver, anger, gallbladder, rage. This is where we hold it in our bodies, which starts to beg the question, if we are holding that, we're holding that survival state, and we create that tension for survival, how's the blood flow to that area? How's the venous drainage? How's the lymphatic flow? For those of you that don't know, that's our detoxification system. We really need that, right? We really need that to be healthy and strong. And so just flooding that information into any of your holding in your body or anywhere the lymphatic system has been habitually held, learning what it feels like to drop in and soften and allow for flow state. As we started, we named where our attention goes, energy flows. Well, that is blood flow. Yeah. So that for me really gave me more information about when these organ systems begin to go offline, lose vitality, lose health, become dysfunctional, diseased, or diseased. Started to really open up the other realms of medicine and diagnoses. Is it all just infection or toxins? Absolutely, these are real things. And what are our mental loops? What are our stored emotions? What is our old stuck trauma? What was our attachment style or co-regulation energy as a child? What was the tone of our nervous system? I think I'm covering this bottom one, so I'll read it for you. So this is just pulling up those avenues of that autonomic nervous system survival programming. So what does that look like? Flight, when we're stuck in that pattern. This is feelings of panic and anxiety. This is the workaholic. Obsessive or compulsive, always busy, over worrying, overachiever, hyperreactive, over analytical. Yes, that's a good one. That's where I was. Got me through school. got my practice going. Didn't really help my nervous system though. So I still find that really ironic that, we're supposed to be these docs, these specialists of the nervous system, and yet we're driving our systems into this and not at all training in how to unwind that, how to take the tone out, how to take care of ourselves. Fight. What does this look like? Temper, angry outbursts, aggressive, demands perfection, pursues power and control, impulsive decision making, assertive or bullying, incessive criticizing or raging. Yeah. So we all have these wirings, but we sometimes tend to lean more into one or the other. So I mentioned the shame piece or the shoulding was more my internal dialogue. I was my own bully. How did I engage the world with that unbalanced state? Oh, working, pushing, going, doing, thinking. Okay, cool. And I'll just lean out of the way for freeze so you can read, as we stated, depression, disassociation, brain fog, spaced out, detached, struggles with decision making, hibernating, lifeless, feeling dead inside, isolated. Yeah. None of us have experienced that, right? Back to that social engagement piece, what we're wired for, what we can regulate through when it's a healthy regulation and co-regulated pattern. And then fawn is a lovely one on here. It wasn't mentioned on the first slide, but it is definitely an activation in the nervous system. And many of you might have some familiarity with people pleasing, codependent, has a hard time standing up, difficult saying no, lack of boundaries, defers to others, avoids conflict. This is that way that we, especially with children, right? Where I'll be so valuable, I'll make myself valuable to you and I'll therefore be safe. So this is often a pattern children will go into in that state of threat. Remember, threat can be emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, chemical, right? Toxin component. And that we are these exquisitely sensitive beings and we're designed to be, and yet that's not really welcomed in our society. Feelings are too big. We don't have time for them. Just go, just do. And then we're awarded for that. Talk about a dopamine loop, right? You get an award cycle for that. That's something else I lived in. So I brought this one in because it gives a spectrum. Like if we're wired for this and we go into this, okay, like we can't fault and blame this wiring that was supposed to be progress or supposed to be, to keep us here to progress. As we move over though, and back into the engagement aspect of the nervous system, this is where we can repair. This is where we can move back into play. So it's less about, do we get triggered? Do we get activated? Does the survival state come up? Are we ever agitated? Are we ever worried? We are. But tuning into that, recognizing that, bringing that awareness into that. And now what? Do we take that breath? Right? Do we connect to our body? Do we call a friend? What are our patterns to reset our nervous system? And that's what this series is really about, deepening in the awareness state and deepening in what are our tools to restore, reset, and repair. Because Psychology Today, Porges was in it. As a culture, we are endowed with the belief that the anxiety packed as it is with worry is a condition that exists in our head. Decades of psychophysiological research have proved to him that anxiety is in our body. It's even more accurate to say that it is in our nervous system. Like other animals, we humans have a unified nervous system. The body and the brain talk to each other because they regulate each other. So when this state is dysregulated, what does it look like? We said brain fog, fatigue, exhaustion, difficulty concentrating, anxiety or worry, feeling irritable, reactive, getting colds, because if our body is constantly in a survival state, that cortisol is jacked up to keep us in it. And our immunoglobulin A, which is one of our main ways of fighting virus and bacteria, drops. Body aches, soreness even if we weren't active, neglecting our own needs, even though we may be struggling, having extreme appetite changes, and I'll also put in there temperature changes. Is this something you guys have experienced or are experiencing? What does that feel like in your body? What are your current practices to support yourself in it? Or do you have any yet? So just going to check in here with the group and with Robin, see if there's any questions, see if I can address anything differently. Okay, great. So just landing back on this beautiful slide now that we've moved through some other information, because we did speak about the arousal side of the curve. Well, what about this deactivation? Right? If we've lived in these attenuated states of charge, go, push, do, or fight the world and fight yourself, and we tipped, ultimately, we will run out of steam and we crash, whether we're sick, right? Whether we get emotionally overwhelmed, or whether we just can't do it anymore. Remember, this is the I can't. And often with clients I work with, there's a lot of judgment that comes up around, so why couldn't I do more? I certainly did. When my system crashed, I stayed mad. I'm going to crash my practice. How am I going to pay for myself? Blah, 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 blah. Like it took a while to get to the, oh, I need something. I haven't been meeting my own needs. I didn't really know how to take care of my nervous system. That was, I mean, ironically funny, right? That was my job to do for other people. I crashed. Yeah, yeah. It's good to have humility. It's good, good, good. So in therapy realm, they talk about this, but we're using it the same example as the component to the nervous system, meaning the window of tolerance. And so on the left side of the screen, you can see that stress and trauma create this shrinking to the window. And if you think about the window of tolerance being a river that you're floating down, you like the unicorn? Yeah. So when the river narrows, it's fast and unsafe. But when the window widens, it slows down and you feel balanced and calm, relaxed, and can control. We can function effectively. We're not hijacked. We can digest. We can sleep. This is good stuff. We want this. So what does that look like to expand? Meditation. That's why we began the way that we did. I'm curious now if any of you had noticed anything after we just kind of brought ourselves into our body, moved into the energies of this earth. Grounding is a big term for that, walking around in grass, getting the ions of the earth around our feet. We literally developed that way. And in this convenient modernized world, which we have a lot of great things, we are very disconnected. We don't have opportunities unless you really, really challenge yourself to spend time in nature and the land. This is completely disruptive. I'm in Chicago in winter. There's weeks we don't go out. This is a for real thing. And then you add the component of any of the childhood trauma or experienced trauma, or I'll even add in their lineage trauma that comes through. This interrupts health. This interrupts our window of tolerance. This interrupts that flexibility between those two states of the nervous system. Again, we are wired to survive, but what are our tools to reset? Dysregulated again, just hitting this home to see if a different version lands for you guys. A trauma or past event, as we've stated, when we go through that, the brain literally goes offline. So its ability to process and release this information is inhibited. This would be why sometimes trauma victims, certain smells will set them off, certain colors, certain environments, because those data points are still in the brain unresolved. Right? As Jung said, when we make the subconscious conscious, we heal. And the way I see it is then we bring ourselves back online. We get both right and left brains coordinating. We get back into this beautiful frontal lobe. We sink into the body. We tonify this vagus nerve. We reclaim ourselves. So to that point of the vagus, this is in charge of heart rate, digestion, respiratory rate. We said this, but inflammation, blood pressure, voice and speech, gut-brain axis, and as stated, your immune response. So when this is not working, we do suffer. What does that look like? It can look like chronic infections. It can look like headaches, dizziness, difficulty swallowing, panic attacks, anxiety, poor digestion, constipation, High stress levels, morning tiredness, hypervigilance. That is that state, that charged state of constantly amygdala being on, looking for trouble, right? Thank you, and I think I'm good right now. And what does that look like when you start to take command back of those centers? They're just doing their job. But until we step into our awareness, until we really reclaim ourselves, they're doing it a lot in our environment. I mean, from Wi-Fi to the news, to our schedules, to our constantly doing, to the internet, right? Information constantly bombarding us. How many times we're on our phone, right? Always getting sick. Your vagus nerve is your body's compass. If it's off, everything is off. So disruptors, stress, trauma, emotional trauma, right? We've also named lineage trauma, bacteria, viruses, of course, heavy metal, toxins, toxic mold, lack of sleep, because this is where we do most of our detoxing for our brain. Any issues within the neck, oral health issues, radioactive elements. Your nervous system relies on your vagus nerve's regulation. Why vagus nerve toning is such a big thing in the neurologic community and neuro rehab. So, hey, check in. Is your vagus nerve working? Is your anxiety low? Do you digest well? Do you respond well to stress? Do you have low inflammation, strong immunity? If you do, awesome. So great. Keep going, keep building it, keep loving on those cells. For those of us that have been in places of fight or flight, loving on amygdala, poor digestion, stressed, tight. Remember that fascia and the tone because the muscles are mobilizing to fight or flight, right? I get a massage, I try to relax, I go to yoga, it all goes away. Okay, well, what are your practices every other hour of the day? What is your inflammation level? How often are you sick? So I had to throw this up. The irony is that we're all on the screens right now, but it's something to think to, whether you're using blue blockers, whether you're taking breaks, whether you're doing restful things with your eyes or just resetting in the day, but recognizing that the average person spends 6 hours, 57 minutes looking at a screen, 3 hours and 43 minutes on their devices. And we check our phones at least 58 times a day. As a business owner, that's how I'm mainly connecting with my clients. So when do we actually actively shut off? When do we put them down? When do we turn them off? Do you put them in airplane mode at night? Or is Wi-Fi beaming through your cells? So what is the cost of all this? We're hitting this home, guys. Nausea, indigestion, could be vomiting, could be stomach aches, throat tightness, dry mouth, sweating, clammy hands, cold feet and hands, shortness of breath, rapid heart rate, anxiety, feeling nervous or agitated or unsettled. And again, if you're used to being in a state, you may not know that there's something different. We don't know what we don't know. You know, I say often to clients, like if you walked around holding a weight all day and at the end of the day you put it down, you'd be like, huh, that's heavy. Like it took unloading it to have you actually perceive that tension. So back to the yoga or the massage or any other care for your body, that you notice a state change, noticing that breath we did earlier, noticing a state change. Those are the building blocks. That's how our body begins to teach us. Noticing there's a little more stillness, noticing the brain is not as busy. What helped me with that? What was your access point? Because as stated, when I started some of the breathwork stuff, that was not mine. I had to learn some other blocks to actually get there, to start to utilize that beautiful technique and modality for deeper healing. So just knowing you're going to come up against some things from your mental body, from your emotional body, especially if they haven't been tended to, and all of that resides in this physical body. I don't know why I'm tight. I don't know why I'm not sleeping. I don't know why I feel mad. Okay, well, it's a great place to start. At least you're noticing something you're feeling. And if you would have told me years ago that most of this healing comes from noticing, I'd be like, whatever. It does. Dizziness, lightheadedness, feeling physically off balance, like literally physically off balance, or emotionally off balance. Oh, God, I'm having these highs and lows. Oh, I just totally yelled at my cat. Don't do that. Sadness, depression, excessive sleep, or insomnia. We're showing the automatic nervous system is struggling. So just that quick picture of moving just the parasympathetic aside, because again, we tend to be really mobilized, which is the sympathetic. We tend to be moving out of fight, flight, and freeze, or hopefully moving out of it. Or we're in fawning, which is all that activation part. What about this other side? What about this rest, digest, heals? So of course, it releases sleep hormones, helps us maintain focus, concentration, helps our pupils change so we get the rest of our peripheral field, which, by the way, amygdala likes. We like having more view, more preview of our world. And, oh, it's nice to see the pretty tree and sunset. When we're in that hypervigilant state, hyper-focus, we're not seeing any of that. So often I'll have clients who start doing this work, they're like, gosh, the colors, or I didn't know that that light was over there, because their field has opened up. Their ability to receive has changed. That's amazing to me. And of course, we do want to digest. We want to bring that blood flow back to our gut system, right? We want to be able to slow our heart rate, slow the pressure on our heart, slow our breathing rate, deepen into the lower lung fields. And of course, we want to produce urine because we're always detoxifying. We poop it out, we pee it out, we sweat it out, we breathe it out. Those are the only pathways we have. We can maximize those. So vagus nerve for tonifying and strengthening. Cold exposure, if you guys haven't heard of that, we get this big jump back into the center of the body because we've created a different temperature on the outside. Gargling, humming, and singing goes into that vocal area, right? So even when I had that walk up of talking about if you feel like you want to move, I was bringing in the animal component, or the shaking out. TRE is a beautiful modality to help invite stored trauma to be released from the muscles, right? Or I just made the comment of making a sound like, using this arena, using this throat chakra, which is a pressure release nozzle. I mentioned even calling a friend, but even just the sound making. But if you came up much like I did of don't make that sound, don't do that, be good, be there, do what you're supposed to do, there was a lot of holding and compression. So when I started to learn some of these techniques of unwinding the nervous system, and I was invited to shake and make sound, I'm like, but no, no, until you give it a little bit of a try and you build those pieces at a time. And now on another class, I'll be going into some of those techniques, but one of them is the melt balls. And when I do that activity now, I do something called neurostacking, which is using more of these avenues of access and releasing. So not only am I connecting with my fascia and doing movement, but then I'm using my breath to sink into my body to oxygenate the lower lungs. I'm shaking my body as it feels like it wants to, and I'm making sound. And I gotta tell you, it feels really good. And for a 5-minute reset between clients, I'm reclaiming my nervous system and changing my state and bringing in self-love and care. Now, when I tried to teach my aunt this the other weekend, she's looking at me from across the room going, what is all that? What's happening there? What are you doing? And it literally was that face. And I had to laugh because I'm like, oh yeah, that's my DNA. Yeah, that's what I had to heal through to allow myself to reclaim my own nervous system. Staying social and laughing. The gazing exercise, if any of you have ever done candle gazing, it's a beautiful meditation. Massage, acupuncture, any other tools you're accessing, and we spoke to grounding. So healing the nervous system is healing both physically and emotionally. Physically, it's beginning to feel our body's sensations. What do we get? Improved metabolism, hormone regulation, better immunity, improved digestion, healthy habits, more energy, better sleep, less tension, and less pain. What happens emotionally? We become present. You get back down in that green section of that social engagement. Less reactive, clearer thinking, able to express, self-compassion, using our voice, being more intentional. We have these big, powerful brains, using it for what we desire versus Amy Gedalia finding all the threats. And from that place, we can build stronger relationships, have more effective communication, and clearly an adaptive stress response. So Viktor Frankl has this beautiful line of between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. So slowing down when we have an activation, when we have that desire to get the heck out of here or to fight somebody because you just can't stand it. Slowing down maybe with that breath, or maybe with just recentering ourselves, or the tools we'll be discussing more in this series, so that you grow that window of tolerance and you grow the ability to respond and not react. There's a lot of people out there in charged up nervous systems that are reacting instead of responding to everything in life and remaining in that hijacked state. This is not the state of connection. This is not the state of optimal health. This is actually not the state of the world we're trying to build. And where does it start? It starts with us. It starts with our own nervous system. It starts with taking command of it. And I'm going to add with compassion, because, I was dumped down into a crash and had to learn these things. And hence why I really wanted to create this series and an opportunity for you to come back and continue to take what's for you and leave what's not, and be exposed to some of the different tools and techniques that I've been training in to allow us to grow skill with this. And so I'll be hosting another 3 of these series. So I want to be respectful of your time today. I'll be letting you know those dates and you're welcome to join. We will be posting and sending out a PDF for all of you that joined with the video and with some summary points and with some offerings. So if you choose to want to join the webinar, the next 3 that will be hosted quarterly, we'll give you the payment link for that. And we'll also be offering the Soul Tribe community, because this is something I feel really passionate about. Bringing people together in a community space, learning about our nervous system, learning about unwinding these threat spaces, learning about deepening and creating this time and space for self-care, self-love, self-honoring, and healing. Healing. I don't know if I hit that point enough, but healing. And that we can do that we are our own healers. Yes, we need support from others. I'm absolutely saying that's it's my job, literally. But my passion is to invite you back to your healer and to be advised and integrated with that. So I welcome you to the journey. If you feel called to come with me on it, I'm going to be staying on for any questions that you might have and reflecting from Robin if anything was posted in the chat. And again, we'll be sending out different ways to continue deepening in the space if you feel called. And so from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for this time. I thank you for your presence. I thank you for your nervous system. I thank you for taking a moment to listen, to share, to be in space, and to just come into yourself, into your awareness of how truly beautiful you are. So I hope you all have a beautiful Saturday, sending unconditional love through all of yourselves, grounding you back down into this beautiful earth and staying connected to these high frequency energies that are our birthright. Thank you for your space and time.